Hey guys, so I thought I'd make a quick video about ancient Egypt and the ET connection. So, where to start? So, I believe that ancient Egypt may hold a key, a huge key to the upgrading of this civilization, to taking this civilization into fourth density, fifth dimension. Why? Because Because there's so much evidence left of an extremely high level civilization with extremely high level wisdom. And so of course the ancient Egyptologists, the mainstream scientists, archaeologists, whatever, claim that the ancient Egypts were just like a bunch of voodoo people who worshipped all these animal-headed gods because they didn't know anything about the nature of reality, and they were just a bunch of like unevolved beings. But of course, anyone who's done any serious research into ancient Egypt and their teachings, and as part of their spiritual path, whilst exploring other teachings about self-realization and empowerment, can see that there is a deep amount of wisdom, a huge amount of transformational power in the Egyptian teachings, such as like the Hermetic texts that have been passed down from ancient Egypt about the balancing of the divine masculine and the divine feminine in the brain. Of course, quite common knowledge in spiritual traditions today. And there is such a power like beyond this, like it goes really deep. Like the initiation societies of ancient Egypt were like super powerful. If you're interested in doing a bit more research into like these high level initiatic societies of ancient Egypt, there's a great book. It's called Initiation by Elizabeth Heitch. I suggest you check that out. It's she recalls it. She starts getting she's a lady that, well, I think she's moved on now. I don't think she's alive anymore, but she lived fairly recently and she started having past life memories, and it's quite a well-known book, so I suggest you check that out. But the point I was getting to, well, I don't know what point I'm getting to really. The point is that there is something really powerful in ancient Egypt that could sort of act as a tipping stone to tip this civilization towards a collective evolution into fourth density, fifth dimension. So why do I think this? Well, there's a lot of physical evidence there. Like, for a start, like Egyptologists claim the Sphinx was built around 2500 BC, but the Sphinx is actually water weathered. It's been, generally geologists agree, hundreds of geologists have agreed that the Sphinx shows classic signs of water weathering due to precipitation, due to rain. And it hasn't rained in the Sahara desert for at least 7,000 years. So like the conservative estimate is, from the geologist's point of view, is that the Sphinx is at least 7,000 years old, which sort of predates a time when they were supposed to have that technology. And it very much looks like it even predates that, and we're likely looking sort of 10, 15,000 years ago that the Sphinx was built, or longer, 20, 30,000 years ago, because there really was no civilization known that could build it 5,000 to 7,000 years ago, and there is some history from that period, I believe. So it points to a much earlier civilization. And of course, when you look at the things like how did they move like 200-ton blocks, like in some of the enclosures around the Sphinx, it would be highly challenging even with today's latest cranes. And they worked out, or some people worked out, that you would need like about 1,800 people to have enough strength to pull a 200-ton block up a 1 in 10 slope to build these enclosures. So the point is, I'm sure you've heard all this before, that the mainstream story about ancient Egypt is just full of holes, full of flaws. And it's being picked apart left, right and centre. And the only reason they're really able to maintain their their grip, their mainstream view is because they just like don't let anyone speak out in public against them. You know, they just they say this is true. We're not going to let anyone research this. We're not going to let anyone else speak about this. We know it all. Nothing to see here. So there was a very deep wisdom in ancient Egypt. There is stories in these ancient texts talking about a group of people called the followers of Horus that existed in like pre-dynastic Egypt, prehistorical Egypt, that's really unrecorded, sort of, I guess, sort of you're looking 5, 7, 10,000 years ago. And Horus is Ra. I think this is agreed upon in Egyptology that Horus is Ra. It's the same being. It's they started calling him Horus at some point, but he was originally Ra. And of course, Ra is the entity that was channeled in the Law of One material by Kyla Roykert. And this is some of the most powerful transformation material for spiritual evolution on the planet. And it seems that this Ra is the Ra of ancient Egypt. And possibly also the Ra-T heir of the Corey Goode David Wilcock material, the being that Corey Goode has had contact with. So we perhaps won't drop down the secret space program rabbit hole here, because that's still open to a lot of interpretation and debate, of course. But the point is, there's a massive amount of wisdom connected to ancient Egypt, and I'm sure you could actually, like, through studying Egyptian teachings and like the handed down Egyptian teachings like Hermetic texts and these sorts of things, you could become self-realized very rapidly just purely by studying the ancient teachings. So where is this going? So yeah, so other ETs in Egypt, Isis. Apparently Isis was like a manifestation of Sirius. So Isis symbolizes Sirius, and Sirius symbolizes the goddess, the divine feminine. And it's likely that Isis was actually Sirius, and Sirius manifested an aspect of her consciousness as Isis. And this is why Isis is so revered in ancient Egypt and really looked up to as one of the great teachers. So I think it's likely that Isis was a real person, a real female. And of course, then we've got like the cat beings like Sekhmet and Bastet. And a lot of people talk about cat beings being related to Sirius and Lyra. So it's very likely that Sekhmet and Bastet were extraterrestrials from Lyra or Sirius, somewhere like this. Who else have we got? We got like Anubis. I don't know much about Anubis. There's not much written about Anubis. However, I am being drawn to begin to channel Anubis. I have channeled him a little bit personally. So keep your eyes peeled. There may be Anubis channelings coming, and I think there will be, and also Isis channelings. I've channeled Isis for clients before, and I will be channeling Isis in the future. So I think it's likely I'm going to start channeling a lot of these Egyptian beings. And I guess really the reason I felt inspired to make this video now is because I feel this is a big key in the puzzle, like that can really show that there's a hidden history to Earth, like that Atlantis most likely did exist. I mean, I sense truly, I've had like past life visions of a life in Atlantis, and I truly sense that Atlantis was real. But there's also so much physical evidence coming into view. If you check out David Wilcock's YouTube channel, he's got a video with Graham Hancock there talking about his latest findings and sort of his general work about proving, like scientifically, through some of the stuff I've talked about, like the water weathering and the logistics of building the pyramids, and like how they, like Göbekli Tepe and these sort of sites that were built all over the world with very high technological advancement to be able to move like 200-ton blocks and to be able to link them up together with like no cracks between them, using no mortar. Quite magnificent technology. So yeah, really the point I'm making is that there's something really powerful going on here, and I'm not quite sure what's happening. But what I feel is happening is that ancient Egypt is about to play a huge part in the collective awakening of humanity. I feel like there's something going on, and this is why I'm being drawn to just talk about ancient Egypt without really knowing what I'm talking about. I feel like something's going to happen. There's such a power in ancient Egypt, and Ra particularly. I mean, Ra holds so much energy in this reality at the minute. I mean, the Law of One is generally revered as one of the most powerful and transformative spiritual texts, contemporary spiritual texts. And so this entity Ra, the bird being, this blue avian, as perhaps Corey calls him, holds so much clout in this reality at the minute. And of course, our beliefs create our reality. So we've got the Law of One material, the Ra material, like I think there's like 5 volumes, and it's like some of the most powerful transformative spiritual material currently available. It was channeled by Carla Roykert about 30 years ago, I'm not sure, something like that. And then we've got Ra's history in ancient Egypt and the followers of Horus, and this idea that Ra was a huge influence for so long in ancient Egypt. And now we've also got the Corey Goode, David Wilcock material about the secret space program and communicating with Ra-T Air. So it's like Ra is becoming such a manifestational powerhouse, holding such energetic clout in this reality at this time, that I just feel like something's going on. Like Ra is here. Hail to Ra. And Ra is going to stay, probably, here to stay. And yeah, so it's really just wanted to give you guys a heads up, like that there's something really powerful in ancient Egypt. I'm sure a lot of you are aware already, but if you're interested in the ET phenomena and you're interested in self-realization, enlightenment and empowerment and like these spiritual practices, there is so much wealth of information in ancient Egypt. So I think that's about it. So keep your eyes peeled. I think there'll be more information coming through me about ancient Egypt, and I'm sure soon I'm going to be channeling, who knows, maybe in Ra. I've channeled Ra personally, maybe not Ra, I don't know, but Isis and Anubis I feel I will be channeling soon. So yeah, so heads up, something's going on in ancient Egypt, and I'm interested in your perspectives as well, because like I say, I don't really know why I'm making this video. I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I've just been guided to come and make a video about ancient Egypt, and I know there's something powerful going on. I know the teachings of ancient Egypt were a very powerful spiritual teaching because they came down from the last cycle. Like, I believe we go through like, okay, I'm not going to get into cycles, or am I? Yeah, well, basically Atlantis was like the peak of civilization like 12,000 years ago, and like this was like the peak of spiritual evolution on planet Earth, and there was massive wisdom, like I believe a lot higher wisdom than really we have access to on the planet at present, even through this hyper accelerated time of spiritual growth. And this was passed down through Ra, through the followers of Horus, through into ancient Egypt. And this is where I believe the initial wisdom of ancient Egypt came from. And this is why, if you look into the history of ancient Egypt, they were actually, the Egyptian society was actually at its highest level right at the beginning, which is a bit strange, don't you think? Because normally civilizations become more evolved over time. Well, according to modern Egyptologists, or well, not Egyptologists, but modern theory. But ancient Egypt was actually at its most evolved. Like the architecture was at its highest, the qualities of the carvings, the wisdom. It seemed to be at its highest, at its peak, right at the beginning of the dynasties, and it degraded. It went down over time. Gradually, the temples got less spectacular, the hieroglyphs weren't carved so well, the statues weren't so amazing, and it seemed like they actually devolved over time. And of course, this points to the cyclical nature that we go through, sort of like 24,000, 25,000 year cycles. And like 25,000 years ago, we were sort of like at a point that we are now, so switching from a cycle of darkness into a cycle of light, and it began to build up, and over 12,000 years it reached like a peak of spiritual evolution on Earth about 12,000 years ago. And after that, it began to devolve and come down, and that's why we see like civilization devolving. So I guess that's a good place to finish this video. So watch out for more updates. Have a great day, guys. Bye.